welcome into another movie review from MBE. I'd just like to thank you once again for joining us here on our YouTube channel. I'm one of your co-hosts, Stephen John McLaughlin. Our co-host, John C. Walsh, is here as well. And, of course, writer, producer, actor, and fellow movie burner, Gianni is back with a bang. It's been a while. I think Batman was the last one we did as a collaboration, and we're back 2 years later. It's worth the wait. But we're here to discuss Wolverine, Deadpool and Wolverine, sorry. We were on a channel last week, of course, John. We were on CINE's Corner.
Yeah.
And we were giving our thoughts and views on the film. But we know, Gianni, that you have just seen the film 48 hours ago, so it'll be fresh in your head. It was fresh in our head and probably too fresh last week. I actually admitted my head was all over the place for this film when we did the review. So it probably wasn't a good time for me to do anything and talk about this film at that point. But I think since then, a lot's embedded in my mind now, and I'm pretty sure you're the same, John.
I know I've had this conversation many times. In fact, Gianni Bartek, who you actually put onto us in the interview, you actually asked us in that interview back in the day, long time ago, when we was fab, some might say, some might disagree, but I digress. He asked us, do you have a preference watching film in the house or at the theatre? And when you go to a theatre, I think you take so much more in. I'm always paranoid if I know I'm going to have to review something or discuss it. That I need to write this down. I need to have notes, because what if I forget it? I never forget anything when I'm in a theatre. I don't know if that's because I'm on the spectrum or something. I've got a really good memory and I take it in when the senses are dulled and I'm at one with the film. But when I'm in the house and I'm watching, I have to take notes, because I won't forget half of the things I've watched. But yeah, much like you, Stephen, I was a little bit in a spin in terms of what my thoughts were on the film. And I just feel like just dominate conversations all the time. So I'm going to really deliberately try and not over-dominate this conversation by giving my views every single second of this stream. So, Gianni, I think I'll pass it over to you, man, because we've discussed this film at length. We're going to discuss it at length again, but I'm really intrigued to hear what your thoughts were. We'll start off. This is fluid. This is not going to be structured. It's going to be just meandering like a river. Any river you want to choose.
We just jump into whatever we want.
Yeah. We started the intro, obviously. What was your thoughts on the intro? Because obviously there was a lot of discussion in the build-up to this film over the legacy of Logan. And the dangers of sullying that wondrous film that was Logan, the ending, the sacrifice of Wolverine for X-23, I think that's her name. I'm always concerned that I'm going to butcher that. They addressed that very early on in this movie. What was your thoughts on the intro and the addressing, literally within, I want to say, 20 seconds of the film coming on? Ryan Reynolds, Wayne Wilson.
It's interesting because when you're thinking about, when I think about Deadpool and I think about the Deadpool movies in particular, this one especially, but even the first two, the thing that always comes to mind is I feel like Deadpool, all three movies of Deadpool's I enjoy. I'll say that off the bat. But the thing about Deadpool, when you're criticizing Deadpool, is that I think it's the sort of poster child for the type of film that if it feels entitled to, if it tells you, the audience, what its flaws are, then it feels like it can get away with them.
Yeah.
And it doesn't excuse it just to acknowledge it. But it does go a long way in terms of like endearing you to the character. So it's a nice thing that they kind of address this stuff outright, but it's also it hooks more, I think, in the audience person than I think the writers always tend to realize when they're addressing this character. And in particular, of course, I'm thinking of like the Deadpool 1 joke where they talk about the budgetary restraints of not being able to go inside the X-Men mansion, right?
Yeah.
And then to what you're saying too in the beginning of this film, where I'm assuming we're just like spoiler, we're going spoilers in.
Yeah,
okay, so in like the very opening moments, as you're sort of referring to, we're literally digging up the corpse of the grave that X-23 puts Logan in at the end of Logan. And I think
the backdrop of Bye Bye Bye.
Yeah.
By some, I can't remember. I think we asked last week. It's NSYNC only Wade Wilson can dance to NSYNC can get away with it. Sorry, Gianni, let you get in.
No, you're right. Because I mean, that's an interesting thing too. Because I do want to ask your guys' opinions about the dance scene in this versus like the dance scene at the end of She-Hulk or something. But we can talk about that in a second. But I think out the gate, the narration sort of addresses this thing where Wade Wilson, in his direct address, says something to the effect of, I know you're worried that, you know the title and that we're going to bastardize Logan, and that's exactly what we're going to do.
Yeah.
It's a nice joke. Does it excuse the artistic intent or lack thereof in kind of taking this idea and going full Monty with it? I don't think so. I think your mileage may vary with how much you enjoy that character and particularly that performance from Hugh Jackman. He's never been bad, and I think arguably every single iteration of Wolverine has gotten better in that performance. But I mean, even this included, do I need it? Do I want it to exist? I don't think so, but I'm also someone who I watch all these movies regardless. Like, I appreciate the MCU. I appreciate, superhero movies. I would say I'm a fan of them, but I'm certainly not a fanboy of them in the sense that I'm gonna just ride all of them to the sunset, like ride or die. That's cinema to me. But I still watch them all, because I think that they can teach a lot of things, and I think it's important in the same way that I listen to a lot of Taylor Swift. Like, I'm never going to be here saying like Taylor Swift is my personal favorite artist, but I like listening to Taylor Swift because
she's a phenomenal writer.
I like to be involved in the cultural conversation. Like, I like that people like her so much, and I try to figure out why that is.
The Eras tour has been insane. The numbers, selling out Wembley for I think 5 consecutive nights and then coming back a month and a half later for like 3 more nights. It's absolutely insane.
Yeah, I mean, Taylor Swift is the MCU of music, and I mean, that's going to mean different things to different people, but I think it's true. Whatever you think about, Wolverine and Deadpool, or Deadpool and Wolverine, excuse me. I guess your mileage is just going to vary with how invested you are.
Hugh Jackman would prefer that.
What's going through your head, John, when that corpse was getting dug up?
I was howling, Stephen. I was loving it. I loved the backdrop. I loved the sort of TVA guys coming in. And almost you're addressing the moral issue of him taking out these guys just nonchalant. It's quite light-hearted. He's dancing about. He's using the adamantium skeletal remains of Wolverine. But this is guys who are like normal human beings who are just out doing their job. They don't want to die. They're just coming to try and get this guy because he's important for... What's his name again? I forget the name of the villain. Already, your man from
Mr. Paradox, right?
Yeah, Paradox, Paradox needs him, so he sent these sort of goons, if you like. And they're kind of addressing that subtly. It's like he's having a great time. And that's just something I've always enjoyed about Wade Wilson in general. Yeah. Mm-hmm. He will just unleash sheer violence and blood and gore. And sometimes it's innocents get caught in it. Yeah. You think of the X-Force, what was it? You've got Brad Pitt's character getting electrocuted. They get fucking massacred within 20 seconds. Right. And you don't really address it, it just moves on. So I was kind of laughing at it. Mm-hmm. And then also taking in, these guys are just getting absolutely destroyed. Yeah. But I loved it, man. I liked the way that it was almost a callback to the OG adamantium, I think, skeleton stuff. I'm pretty sure it was anyway. I seen someone write that. I didn't take that in at the time watching the film, but apparently that was a callback. And I think that's something throughout this film that you see again and again, real deep cut references to the older X-Men movies from 20 years ago. So I loved the intro. I really enjoyed it.
Fantastic.
Well, that was something that I think I didn't expect going in, was that I didn't realize that this was going to be like a total send-off to Fox comic book movies. That was kind of like very surprising in a very good way for me. I don't know how you guys felt about that, but
right down to the clip at the end, the reel at the end.
I follow Ryan Reynolds on Instagram, and he did address that. He said that as much as this is a welcome into the MCU, it's also a fond farewell to obviously 20th Century Fox Studios as well. Mm-hmm. And he thanked them obviously for everything they've done for him and the character. So I mean, I think most of us are looking at the sort of other side of it, like this is the the beginning of Deadpool in the MCU, but it's a fun farewell as well to the old studio.
I'm intrigued what you think of that, because that's something that's been discussed a lot. Obviously, it's not technically pertinent to this actual film, but do you see a future for Deadpool in the MCU moving forward? Because I've still got real issues with the tonal sort of bridging of Deadpool, R-rated, breaking the fourth wall, cussing out, just the violence and the sort of cookie cutter PG MCU movies and Disney movies in general we've had.
I just want to see
that
what
bridges.
I want to see what Thor was crying for. Really. So I do want that film.
That was interesting. Yeah.
That you referenced that, right?
I don't think it can work, but I mean, as the MCU, particularly in like Phase 4 and the beginning of Phase 5, has kind of shown me, it doesn't really matter what I think. Like they're gonna do it anyway. Because if it's up to me, then I think that, you know, I would have moved Secret Wars way up. I would have already redone the whole MCU by now. You know, I would have just overhauled it, used Secret Wars as the excuse to just sort of blow the thing up and then start from scratch. That's, I think, the best case scenario at this point. And I think the problem is that everything's too convoluted, stacking on each other too much. And they're trying to go from they're trying to jump right into what Phase 2 did, which was get more experimental with the stories, but they haven't even done the Phase 1 part of it in regards to Phase 4 and showing us new characters in a way and endearing us to them. So with exceptions, of course, but I mean, can Deadpool work in the larger cosm of the MCU? I don't think so. I mean, just based on what you're saying too, because I had the same issues in regards to Deadpool and Wolverine. I thought that the tone was really all over the place. I don't think you can have the sort of sincerity that a lot of some of the more emotional scenes have, and still then go back to, you know, we're making dick jokes and we're dancing to Madonna. You know what I mean? Like, you can't, those two things can't always work together. And I think that this movie is a great example of something like that. Not actually.
I found that at the end. It was, that kind of wound me up a little, at the ending. I understand they're almost poking fun at previous MCU and just soppy emotional endings that have no real jeopardy, and you know it's all going to work out happily ever after. But they took that too far, because there wasn't enough of a gap between them sacrificing themselves, having this real powerful moment where they're gripping onto each other, working as a team. These two lone wolves who are kind of outsiders never really found themselves to be part of something meaningful. I mean, they look at, you see that with the Happy Hogan stuff at the start, where obviously Wade is desperate to be in the Avengers, and I think Happy's like, mate, just because you want to be in it, that's not the rationale. I'm paraphrasing here. You need to. I can't remember what it was, but it was a really funny scene. It was a powerful little line he delivered, basically saying you need to have a reason to be part of the Avengers, and it's not just because you want it. To write your life and the people in your life. But I digress, man. The ending kind of rubbed me up the wrong way. It was a really powerful scene, these two guys. Obviously, you get to see Hugh ripped as well, so it was good for him. But then, like 20 seconds later, they're skipping onto the screen again.
Is that not just the style of Deadpool?
Yeah, it is.
The
but
sort of narrative, he moves on very quickly, like you said earlier, John.
But it's like what Gianni says, though. Sometimes that works in isolation for Deadpool, but if you're bringing in like Hugh Jackman as Wolverine and you've got sort of tonal clashes, because his movies are very different to Wade Wilson Deadpool kind of movies, sometimes when you have that powerful emotional moment and then 20 seconds later they're skipping and like, we're back, bitches. Don't worry,
but I found
you're going down Paradox.
I found that in the car scene when Wolverine was getting tore into Deadpool about his attitude, the way he behaves. He doesn't take his life seriously. He doesn't take anything. Says everything's a joke to him. You know, and it was getting to the point where it was getting to an emotional point, and then all hell broke loose, didn't it? Obviously, they started fighting with each other in the car.
I'm going to fight you now.
So yeah, I mean, it's weird as an audience member watching that, and especially when it has those emotional scenes, and then in the blink of an eye, it goes to those dick jokes, you know?
But Gianni, I don't know about you. I don't know if I presume you've seen just about every film. I want to say you're just unbelievable. I presume you've seen like Jojo Rabbit and Taika Waititi kind of movies. He does that wonderfully for me, where he'll balance really dark and emotional stuff with airy, funny stuff, and it can be a minute apart. and you can have a really soaring, beautiful piece of music. I think of Jojo Rabbit, Mama, Roy Orbison. You've got Scarlett Johansson's mother character. They're having a blast. It's quite a powerful, familial moment, and then bang, you're in the gutter. She's obviously been killed by the Nazis, the German forces. And then again, a minute and a half later, you'll be back up, euphoric. When that's done right, it can be a positive for a film. And to be fair, in this film, I think they do get the balance just about right in the main. It was really just the ending for me. I didn't mind that fight sequence in the Honda Odyssey or whatever the movie with the car was called. Taking pops at that car, I don't know why. I think they got the balance right in the main. It was just really the ending that kind of rubbed me up the wrong way. It was like, just leave it a minute, please. Give us some sort of tension.
I think it's a couple of things, because like when you reference something like Jojo Rabbit, like it's a good example, right? Because I think that the missing element is, there's two that come to mind. Is like, one, I think that Taika does a really good job in kind of putting the audience in the frame of mind of juvenile characters, right? So you have but then it's also the second thing, which is like, you have to believe in those characters' circumstances. The protagonist of Jojo Rabbit, you're immediately invested in who that character is, and how they see the world. You know, this like sort of unicorn version of Adolf Hitler, like encouraging you through all these different things. Like, it feels a bit more sincere because it's coming from the mind of that young boy. Whereas the thing about Deadpool is that I've never bought into Deadpool's sincere moments, because the one thing that all of those movies have told me about that character over and over again is that as soon as like the incident really happened, like nothing is taken seriously. And they reinforce that with the insistence on if Deadpool as a franchise, if Deadpool has a choice between stakes and the joke, they're going to take the joke every time. So then to have these scenes where, you know, Hugh is yelling at him in the car, or you know, this like kind of emotional montage at the sort of end when they're holding hands there, like, if you're having these moments, the whole thing I'm waiting for the moment where there's a silence and then there's a joke. And when that doesn't happen, you don't get it. Yeah, like
with Wolverine, I mean, it's a powerful moment. You're really buying into it. These two guys are being kicking 7 shades of shit out of each other for the entire movie, stabbing, borderline decapitations, you know, and then they're finally together as this sort of duo trying to save their universe and do the right thing. And then he's stripped of his clothes. And it's like, this guy's shredded. I understand he worked for it and you want to show it off, but that's almost like a little piss take jokey moment in that scene. So you're absolutely right. They do. They always kind of go for the jokes. Speaking of the jokes, Gianni, I don't know what the theatre situation was with you. Obviously, you've seen the movie, 10 days or something, maybe just over a week out?
Yeah, I was like just over a week removed from...
So how busy was the theatre? And I'd be intrigued to hear how the jokes landed in the main, because in the theatre we also went 2 days after, 2.5 days after it released, and a lot of the jokes did land. But what I found really interesting was I was laughing at some jokes, other people weren't. And then there was jokes everyone was laughing at, and then there was jokes people were laughing at I wasn't laughing at. So it was kind of... I've seen a lot of people commenting on this film saying there's a lot of jokes, not every one of them lands, but I think that was quite deliberate. I think they're almost trying to tailor the experience for different individuals, because that's what I got from it. I laughed at a lot of stuff. There's stuff I didn't laugh at. Is that something you found when you went to see the film? Were you laughing at stuff other people weren't? They were laughing, you were, you know, vice versa. Is that something you experienced? I'd be really intrigued.
Yeah, so yes, definitely. What was funny about it was, so like the whole time I was watching it, it was packed theater, by the way, which I was surprised at. Cause like I said, I saw it like a week late, and there's plenty of people there. The guy immediately next to me and the person that I went with was like exactly the stereotype of the type of person to like watch and enjoy a Deadpool movie, which power to him. I'm not often easily annoyed by like people talking in movies. Like I really, it doesn't really always bother me. if they're talking about the movie, that's really all I care about. This guy, the things that he was saying was like, I mean, it was the mind of an 11-year-old. I mean, and I'm so happy for him that he clearly had the best time of his life. But it was stuff like, I mean, Daphne Keane, her like introduction as X-23, and they're like the fourth person, and she's like, it's me or whatever she says, and then she comes around the corner, it's her silhouette first, and the guy next to us is like out loud, like loud as shit too, and he was like, I'll bet you $5 that's X-23. And then sure enough, the silhouette reveals it's X-23. And once again, he goes, give me my money. That's what he did the whole time. And so I'm so glad that guy had a great experience, but he was insufferable to sit next to. But most of the theater was kind of like, yeah, I think to varying degrees, having sort of different chuckles of laughter. I think there are jokes that really hit and really land.
Yeah.
The only time that I truly and honestly was like, I'm laughing and no one else is laughing was Gambit. I found everything that Gambit said. Oh my God. That was
Jesus.
The funniest.
I was not expecting that.
I was
not expecting that accent. I'd heard of the character.
Yeah.
I'd heard of Channing Tatum wanting to play the character. I know that he's from New Orleans, I think, and the character is based in there. Although I discovered last week he may be French or something. I thought he was like a New Orleans Caribbean kind of character. And then when I heard that accent, I'm like, what the fuck is this? I mean, and it was like a Jamaican, but in Channing Tatum. It
was like a Jamaican and Foghorn Leghorn had a child, and then that child did meth, and like I was obsessed with the choice. Every single line out of his mouth, I couldn't stop laughing. And there's like I think my favorite joke in the whole movie is a direct reference to it, where I think Deadpool says something about his dialect. He's like, "Who was your dialect coach? The Minions?" And I thought that was so funny. But from then on out, I mean, everybody in the theater seemed to take that character completely seriously, except for me. I was crying laughing. I couldn't stop. I mean, every single thing out of his mouth. I've been quoting it nonstop. It's been unbelievable. I mean, there was like, what was the one where he was like, "Oh, I've been waiting a long time for this. I was about to make a name for myself." I was like, it's the best. I couldn't believe it. I really, that
I wasn't expecting it. No, I was stunned when he first spoke. I'm like, holy shit, what is this? It's crazy. It was almost like Ewan McGregor doing fucking, I'm forgetting his name. You know what I'm talking about? The sort of
his Jiminy Cricket,
the lamp thing.
Oh,
what's he called?
Lumiere
in Beauty and the Beast. It was like the worst French accent, and his wife's French. It's like, what the fuck? I think he had to go in and re-sing the "Be Our Guest" stuff because he sounded Mexican. It was almost as bad as that. I'm like, this is terrible. Really, really poor. The character, I really liked the character. I liked the concept. I liked his power with the cards. I love the colour purple, so I liked the whole purple stuff. But the actual persona and the dialect that was thrown out, I was like, what is going on here? So I completely agree. Yeah. One of the moments that really got a laugh in the theatre for us was the car fight scene.
Yeah.
When it cuts to the next day or something, and Deadpool's all strapped up. It's like seatbelts just strapped up. People were howling at that. That was one of the standout moments. But I felt, I don't know if it's me, I've got slightly different humour, but I was laughing at the things people weren't laughing at. But that's often the case for me. I tend to laugh when people are in danger or something bad's happening to someone. I'm a bit fucking weird that way.
I thought the audience in our theatre was actually quite interactive.
They were,
which is quite a thing in the UK, Gianni. I don't know if you've ever been to a movie theatre over here or what, but we're very reserved. We don't really let our guard down at any point. But I felt there was a good energy in that room for this film. I think maybe not to the extent of the guy that was sitting next to you, but certainly there was a lot of guffaws throughout. And John was right. There was a lot of things that I wasn't laughing at, and John was.
I was howling.
He was howling, and then vice versa.
Yeah,
and that kind of thing. But
I just love Ryan Reynolds. There's something about his energy. Something he brings to that character.
But I do agree with you, John. I do think it was constructed that way. It was to apply to all demographics, all ages. The humour. There was some really traditional Deadpool humour in there. The dick jokes, as we've said, but there was ones that I just thought was a bit bit obvious, you know.
Well, I
but-
mean, like, nice pool. I
Yeah.
just, every time he came on the screen, I was just absolutely blown away, mesmerised
The
by the guy and
proposal.
laughing at him.
yeah.
The hair, constantly smiling. I'm like, this is just demonic. The dog.
There was
Dog
something.
food, whatever
There
you
was
call
something
it.
like a little uncanny about Nice Pool.
Yeah,
where
it
I was
wasn't
like,
right.
it almost
Yeah.
didn't quite look like Ryan Reynolds. Like, even
Yeah.
though it was just
Yeah.
so everything about
It was
that
an
was
AI.
I thought it was closer to Legolas and the Hobbit. You know how they did that CG thing on
Yeah,
Orlando
yeah.
Bloom's face?
Yeah.
It was like that. It's really
You know, it wouldn't
unnatural.
surprise me if they deliberately sort of fudged the de-aging just to
Yeah.
make it that little bit off, because
I
he
can see
just
that.
loves poking fun at himself. Speaking of poking fun at yourself, one of the other funny moments for me, and it was just, I don't know if anybody else laughed at it. I mean, I think me and you did, Stephen, for sure. But the whole proposal moment,
Oh my
where
god!
he's like, "Oh, you're breaking the fourth wall. I can do that too." The proposal,
Proposal.
and it just leaves it.
Yeah.
I was just howling at that. I'm like, no other person in Hollywood will poke fun at themselves incessantly like Ryan Reynolds. The guy, I used to hate Ryan Reynolds like 20 years ago, 15 years ago, when he was doing rom-coms. I hated the guy. There was just something about him. I says it last week on CINE's channel. He was like the Canadian Hugh Grant.
Mm.
And much like Hugh Grant, he's grown on me
Yeah.
over the years. And since he's taken on this iteration of Deadpool, I've really, really grown to appreciate the guy and his humour. And you've seen a side to him, sort of
Yeah,
what he
pokes fun
does
at
with
himself,
sports and charities and everything.
Yeah.
He earns a lot of money, but he really does do his best to share that wealth around and make things better for other people. So I've taken to him quite a bit. I was going to say something that's left my mind. Yeah, just what he says about the actual theatre being full and how it surprised you. This movie is just unbelievable. You're talking what, it came out last Thursday, so we're talking what, 8 days or something, nine days out. I can't do maths, I'm terrible at it. I'd need to think about that, how long it's been. But it's earned $824 million worldwide. That is unbelievable.
Yeah.
That is comfortably the most successful Deadpool movie of all time. The previous two earned roughly about 300 odd million. So this is nearly tripled in
Wow.
just over a week. So I think that speaks volumes about just what the MCU think fan base have been waiting for in a film like this. I think a lot of the films in Phase 4 haven't really paid off for a lot of people. I really like Shang-Chi. I like Spider-Man No Way Home. There's been a couple other ones maybe that here and there that I've not minded, but a lot of it's been really...
Guardians 3, yeah.
Guardians 3 I loved,
Yeah.
really enjoyed.
Yeah.
But things like Thor, I'm blanking on this fucking name of it
Love
now.
and
Love and
Thunder,
Thunder, hated that film. Really, really poor film for me. The way they underutilised Christian Bale was a crime against humanity.
Yeah.
To take a guy of that standing and really just, I mean, it was really disappointing.
I mean,
So
not
I
even
think-
Chris Hemsworth likes that movie. So
Yeah, it was terrible. I thought they did. Really disappointing. But I think it speaks volumes about where the MCU is now. That if you do produce a film of this caliber, people will resonate and they'll go and watch it. It's not dead. People keep saying it's dead, the franchise. They have to reboot it and you need to bring back all these characters that were in the early stages of it. You don't.
I think there's a lot of anticipation, obviously, for this as well. The Deadpool coming into the MCU, Wolverine coming back as well was a big factor in it, and I think the promotion over the last maybe 2 or 3 months has been phenomenal on YouTube in terms of variety,
Lad Bible and stuff like that.
Lad Bible, Hot Ones as well. I don't know if you watched that at all, Gianni, but we watched the Hot Ones as well, and I was in tears just laughing.
Yeah, they're great.
These two guys and their chemistry, you know.
Yeah, and I mean that shows in the product of the film too. I mean, there's nothing. I think there's a lot of things that I could say that are criticisms of Deadpool and Wolverine. The reality is that it's all going to fall on deaf ears, because at the end of the day, and I think John, I think you were saying this maybe before we.
Yeah, we'll get into that. Yeah,
but it's like,
yeah, we'll get into that.
I mean, you either are an MCU fan and you love this, or you're not and you don't.
Yeah.
You know, this really not. I mean, there's not a whole lot of room for people to be like kind of in between on it. You know what I mean?
Well, we'll get into that just now, man, because obviously before we came on, I kind of discussed how when we were on CINE's channel, it was mostly a celebration of Deadpool and Wolverine, just the two characters being together again on the screen. Not again, but being together on the screen. It's been long awaited. The two actors have been talking about it for, what I say, like best part of a decade.
Yeah.
But really want to start together. And you've had this fake sort of confrontation where they're creating adverts and taking pot shots at each other. We know that they are obviously are really good friends in reality. And we really celebrated that on that channel. I feel like we didn't really delve too much into the maybe being a little bit more impartial and criticising the movie from afar. I know that's something you are really good at, Gianni. It's something I've always been impressed with by your writing, your ability to maybe step out of the film and really break it down in all its sort of components and say, look, I don't like this, I don't like that. That's something I've always really struggled with when I've watched a film. I become too invested in it to withdraw myself at times, unless it's Phoenix Forgotten, which was fucking terrible. I hate that film. And I'll continually reference that film. It's one of the worst found footage films ever made. And I'm not a fan of found footage films, but that film is shockingly bad. The ending is a horror, a complete horror back, and not for the reasons they intended. I think they intended it to be kind of horror-ific. I like to use that word, but it was a horror-ific ending for the wrong reasons for me. But I think you can look at this movie, and you've kind of addressed it already, Gianni, where you can't really take the downsides of the film too serious because they lay it out on the table for the audience consistently with Deadpool. They'll not hold back. They'll say, look, this is missing, that's missing. That's very MacGuffin-y, this story. Paradox needs you to do this. Anchor beans not even been addressed in the MCU at any point that I'm aware of.
Yeah,
and then they'll
unless
just
it was
say,
in
look,
Loki season 2, which I did not watch.
was it? Yeah, I've not seen season 2 yet.
I'm so bad at like keeping up with things lately.
Was that in season 2 then? Anchor beans?
It might be. I don't know. It's the one thing I haven't seen, so I'm like, shit.
Yeah.
It might be.
I think people who have seen it were even questioning the anchor bean thing. So I think that's just a classic Deadpool thing. We need this character. We need Wolverine to come into this story. Let's just create that. So they'll air it and they'll proudly admit, look, this is the sort of maybe the failings of this film, but you're just going to love it anyway because it's Wade Wilson sawed it. But I think kind of taking yourself out, I think there's two ways of looking at this film. You can just really appreciate it and love it for what it is. Having Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds together on the screen, playing these two iconic characters, beating the shit out of each other and everything in their path, and just really embrace that and love it. Or you can take yourself away from that and really break down everything in this film. And when you start breaking down everything, and I've done it, but I still love the film as well, so I'm going to contradict myself, but there is definite weaknesses in this film. The story is light. I mean, it's not dense at all. It's very superficial. The villain is plural because you've got Cassandra. Is that her name?
Cassandra.
Paradox,
right?
Yeah.
Really underutilized. Felt like an attack-on to the story. Really, just to have a villain there for the sake of having a villain. And obviously, the MacGuffin's in there. I mean, Peter Pool. Let's just put him in there to get these two guys away from 100 bloodthirsty Deadpools that are standing between them and saving the day. There's a lot of MacGuffins in there. I kind of questioned the Peter Pool one. It was almost as bad as the Wayfinder and the Rise of Skywalker. It's like just ridiculous. So you can take a step back and really break this down. It really, I think, depends on the type of individual you are. I don't know if that's something you would agree with, Gianni, and Stephen as well.
Yeah.
Did you go into this just ignoring all the failings of the film, just fully invested in seeing these two guys and the batshit crazy nonsense that comes with it? Or did you kind of keep that analytical critiquing side on and think, that's a bit shit, that didn't work, that's not so great, I'll keep that in the back of my mind?
I for me, like, I don't know, I've been I mean, not to say that I'm not to say that I have any sort of like major success or anything like that. I'm not walking on any red carpets interviewing people, but I've been a critic for a long time, right? And I think that I know that a lot of people talk about, just turn your brain off for this one. Like, this is a popcorn movie, That's just not how I enjoy art. I'm someone who tries to be fair. I try to find some sort of unbiased objectivity to things that I watch, even if I'm really excited for something. I've been wrong before too. Like, I was super excited for Batman v Superman. If you had asked me the day before that movie came out, I was like, this is going to be a masterpiece.
It should have been epic.
I
It
have
should
a,
have
I
been.
have a friend who tells a story. I don't even remember doing this, but I have a friend who tells a story that I was sitting in that movie, and he just describes like there was something that happened like 30 minutes in, and I just like went forward and like put my head in my hands, like like that's just crestfallen, But I try to find some sense of sort of objectivity with these things, and it doesn't discount someone else's ability to enjoy something, but and I've always said this, like, critics are just translators for an audience to a creator. You know what I mean? It's just all a good critic should ever aspire to do is just say, this is what I think the intention was, and then this is why emotionally you may or may not have connected with it, right? And just like that's all it is. It's just a facilitator. It's a bridge gap between an audience and a creator. How many different movies do you see, and then you're like, I really want to see what so and so said about it. Did so and so like it, right? And that's all a critic should ever really be. I think that a lot of different people take advantage of that type of relationship, but that's neither here nor there. That's a conversation for another time. The point is, in regards to Deadpool and Wolverine, I watched this movie and I'm able to laugh and smile and like enjoy Gambit in particular, but enjoy all of the things. And then I got out of it, and immediately I think like one of the first things I said was like, I just think the villain motivations are so weak.
And
I mean that's one thing. I mean, it's a very inconsequential movie. 70% of it takes place in the void that doesn't actually exist in anything. I think that Wade Wilson's whole motivation to want to matter to people, I think, is obviously a meta commentary on, finding Deadpool's place in the MCU at large, but I think doesn't actually work in the context of the film, because I don't see any evidence for it outside of him saying and asserting it over and over again. I think even scenes that are fun, like, you had talked about like the Deadpool, like fighting through all the Deadpools or whatever. Like that's a fun scene.
Totally unnecessary.
It makes no sense in the context of the film.
I don't know why it was in there.
I don't know why.
I enjoyed it.
Cassandra Nova is like, okay, I'll send you back to your universe. Then decides, actually, that same universe, I want to destroy it, or I want to actually use it as a portal to destroy all universes altogether. And rather than using her ability, which we've already seen her use on the fucking Human Torch, to just rip your skin off of your body, I'm going to instead send a slew of Deadpools after you, a slew of people that I didn't even know existed. I had no reference for before. That just doesn't make any sense. It's and again, it goes back to what I was saying earlier, where it's like, if Deadpool has a choice between stakes and a joke, it's always going to pick a joke. And that's just one of those examples. I understand that a lot of people just like that stuff. I understand if you sat there and you were like, I really want to see Wolverine and Deadpool fight. I think, and I don't mean this as disparagingly as maybe it's going to come across, but when I was 13, I really would want to see that as well. And I don't mean to say that like those people are all 13 or they have the mind of 13-year-olds, but I understand where that comes from. It lives in my body as well. But I think
that's something we've discussed.
I mean, there's just a certain like I get to a certain place where I'm like, when I watch, and not that I'm a prude or anything, but like when I watch a sex scene and I watch a fight scene, like the stuff that's in Deadpool and Wolverine, I'm like, what is this actually adding to anything? And it's funny to talk about it in the context of sex scenes, because I think you can make a very obvious argument that particularly the car fight scene is a sex scene. At least in what it's supposed to be giving to an audience. And I think that ultimately it's gratuitous, and ultimately it doesn't really have any purpose in the story. But if that's something that you really sought after, I think there's a lot of things to really like about it. I'm not a huge fan of CGI blood, and I think it's very overused in this movie. But I think artistically, it's a very, very strong juxtaposition from everything else we get in the MCU. And I like the idea of like close quarters combat in like a Honda Odyssey. being
Just
as
even though I don't understand the whole Odyssey stuff.
yeah, like I like that idea. Like I think that's fun. I can see why they
Was he
thought that was
personally
fun.
affronted by it? That's another thing that really struck me as being bizarre. I think he referenced
It's
the
almost
Honda
like an
Odyssey
in-joke, yeah,
twice.
yeah.
I don't know if that's a reference to a previous Ryan Reynolds movie.
I don't know either.
don't get the joke,
He
but
had
yeah.
like a legitimate vendetta with
Yeah,
Honda,
it's bizarre.
and it was fun. It was funny.
Oh, sorry, I cut you off, Gianni, man. I'll let you
Oh no,
continue on.
no,
It
no.
was
I mean,
tremendous.
that's the basic gist of it. I mean, look, we could go on and on, but like at the end of the day, there's really just two types of people who watch these movies. I mean, unless you're, maybe I'm not giving credit to perhaps a majority of people who have no horse in the race who then came out of it and were like, I liked this and I didn't like that and whatever. But I mean, the three of us
like
are.
that, yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
there was
Three of us are in a
moments.
different place. You know?
Yeah, I mean, there was moments like you just described there, Gianni, where obviously for the Batman v Superman film, where you're holding your hands.
Yeah.
I was the opposite. There was moments that I wasn't really comfortable with. I wasn't really sort of connecting with, where I was actually going back the way like that. You probably saw me doing that, John. I was like,
yeah, just like Luthor in the whole film. One of
Yeah.
the worst cast fucking actors ever. It just made no sense. That's why I'm looking forward to this new Superman with Nicholas Hoult playing Lex Luthor, because that feels to me like a proper casting. He's really improved over the years since About a Boy. I liked About a Boy, incidentally. But no, I agree, man. And it's why I brought it up, because when I was watching it, I was trying to switch my brain off. And to be fair, I did it successfully enough. There was moments I really enjoyed. Obviously, getting into the void, the fight sequence with those two at the start, and you've got the ashes of Fox behind and whatnot, and just taking pot shots and killing, what's he even there? I forgot his name. The fucking shape-shifting werewolf guy with the black eyes.
Sabretooth?
Hate that character. What's he called?
Sabretooth?
Sabretooth, yeah. Just little things like that, taking the piss out of characters that came before. You're expecting this big, exquisite sort of fight sequence. It just takes them out, decapitates them within 20 seconds. I was able to switch my brain off in the main, but there was times when I'm watching it, I'm like, that's weak as hell, man. Yeah. And I agree with you with the Deadpool sequence. So on a visual level, the cinematography going down the side of the street, really impressive the way they shot it. I liked the way they went off screen and then came back, and they were kind of pushing all these guys back. It was almost like a comic book. It was like a literal comic book. It could have been 2D on a piece of paper.
Yeah, those action panels that just the strips. Yeah, like
it could have been that. Almost like it was paying homage to that. But then when you actually think about it, you're like, that added nothing to the actual film. It was just an obstacle to try and give this Cassandra villain character a chance to get to like 90% completion on this fucking world ripper. What's called the machine?
It was a Time Ripper or World Ripper.
Time Ripper, right? Time Ripper. It was just to give her a sort of boost so she could get to this point where everything's on a knife edge when they finally get in there and they have to make this heroic sacrifice. But on a human level, an analytical level, I'm like, that made no fucking sense happening in this film. I mean, I liked some of the aspects. Nice Pool getting shot 50 times. And I'm taking the piss out of him to get the sort of gold guns, but it just made no sense on a story level. And I agree with the voice stuff. Don't get me wrong, it's a nice sort of conduit to bring in cameos for Wesley Snipes, for what's she called again? I'm blanking on her name. Young actor, X-23 actor. Always forget her name.
Oh, Daphne
Keenan. Obviously, you get Chris Evans in there as Johnny Storm.
Yeah, even Henry Cavill, which was
Jennifer Garner's in there, and you've got Channing Tatum. That was a nice way to introduce these characters into the film. And much like Multiverse of Madness, you don't really get any real input. Well, you kind of do, because they bring them fucking back at the end, and that makes no sense. How can they be in this unit? You can. That's what I'm talking about with this film. You try to go with it, and then they do things. You're like, how is that working? How can X-23 be in this universe? How can that Wolverine now be in this universe when the Wolverine from that universe sacrificed himself? They kind of explained in Loki that's not how it works. If you do that, you're creating a sort of ripple in time, and they have to go and deal with it. It's a rogue variant. You can lose your mind with this film, man. You really can. It's almost like Terminator timeline charts in one film. It's like, just fucking don't think too much about it. But I do. I always like to think too much about things. So I was kind of taking it apart while laughing at it. I suppose that we'll go away for that because that's too heavy. We're tearing it to shreds. So we'll kind of we'll try and be a little bit more upbeat. What was your thoughts on the cameos, Gianni? I'm intrigued. We discussed last week. I think our favourite and probably most surprising one was Blade. Wesley Snipes coming in. I grew up with the Blade movies 25 years ago or something. I don't really remember much of them. My one takeaway, I did grow up with them though, and I did enjoy them at the time. My one lasting memory of Blade, apart from him being fucking incredibly cool when I was a little guy, was something that emotionally scarred me for a long time. And even though I don't know if it's what film it was from, he kind of fell down into a black pit, and there was like this horrific creature in there, and it put the shitters up me when I was a little guy. See if I discovered that I was like 14 when that film was out, I'll have to address my life. But yeah, that was one of my favourite cameos. Obviously seeing Blade in there, seeing like a 62-year-old Wesley Snipes doing his thing, and not looking like Al Pacino or Robert De Niro in The Irishman. That was a standout for me. What was your thoughts on the cameos? Apart from obviously Gambit, because we know what you made of Gambit.
We all know how I feel about Gambit, which was universally positive. No,
were you surprised to see Chris Evans, and was it spoiled for you before you went in that he wasn't Captain America?
So no, the only one that I knew about was Wesley Snipes, because my brother had seen the movie before I did or whatever, and he was trying very hard to not talk about certain things, but he did want to talk about the one thing, which was the line that Wesley Snipes has about being the only Blade. Yeah, he's only ever going to be the only Blade, which I thought was crazy to leave in this movie, because as vocal as the sort of development hell has been for Mahershala Ali in his Blade movie, I'm just shocked that Kevin Feige would allow that to be in the final product of Deadpool, because I was like, wow, they fucking hate this guy, this Academy Award winning Mahershala Ali. I guess they just don't want to make his movie, which is crazy to me, to have that type of bad blood. But I digress. I mean, that was the only thing that I guess rubbed me the wrong way. I quite loved a lot of the cameos. It was surprising because I think I expected, and it's weird to say this because there are a lot of them, but I expected like a lot. I expected a lot more in a bad way. Like I expected it to be nothing but cameos. In the same way that, like, I think if you talk to non-MCU fans, what they think something like No Way Home has, or what they think something like Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness has, is what I was expecting Deadpool and Wolverine to actually do, which was like just these useless cameos just over and over again. And I actually found, like I was saying earlier, the most surprising and positive thing that I could really say about the movie is how good it is at being like an endearing send-off to the Fox superhero movies. And I think that's the thing that I liked the most about it, which was it felt very in line with giving a lot of these people a second chance at sort of redemption, which I think plays a lot, obviously, to the central themes of the movie. But even in like the sort of meta commentary on it, like having Elektra be able to come back and like be cool for even if it's just for a couple of minutes is really neat, and it is really fun. And then even being able to do like the same thing with someone like Toad, or you know what I mean, I'm shocked that, or maybe I missed it, but I'm shocked that there wasn't a reference to that horrible line in X-Men 1 about like what happens to a Toad when he gets struck by lightning, the same thing that happens to everything else. I'm shocked that Deadpool didn't take that low hanging.
You know, I don't even want to think about electrocution after being on Twitter today and seeing a video of a guy literally getting up in flames. It's like, what the fuck are you doing to me, Elon Musk? You're traumatizing me on the daily, mate. Can you stop? I really have to
between that and all of the porn, the unsolicited porn.
I have to go to following. I keep wanting to go to the following timeline, but I end up back in For You. I think I'm a sucker for punishment. Clearly, I like to see people getting impaled on bollards and whatnot. It's fucked up. I need to stay off of Twitter. I really do. It's crazy. I don't know if you've seen that video. It's nothing to do with Deadpool v Wolverine, but I keep seeing V and Wolverine. French guy following 8 stories onto a bollard. One of the things that I never thought I would see, I never thought that I wanted to see, but now that I've seen it, I'm still amazed that 7 months later that it actually happened. It was real. A guy fell onto a bollard. He obviously died. It's fucking horrific. But
You just watched this on Twitter?
I just watched it on Twitter.
It's so bleak.
It was so quick. It was so quick. It just fell, and it was like, oh my god, is that not his?
Oh my
you know
God.
what? It didn't even through his shoulder. I digress. Sorry.
That is so morbid. No, but I see crazy stuff on Twitter all the time though too. It's like, and sometimes you just can't look away. It's like a car accident. But yeah, no, I digress. I mean, I think by and large, to answer your question as concisely as I can, I've already been so long-winded. It's just I very much enjoyed the people that they chose for it. I think. And just touching on Gambit too, which is one more time.
Yeah.
I think it's amazing that guy tries to get that character made into an actual movie for almost 2 decades, and then finally gets the opportunity. But it has to be, we have to make it a joke. And he says, "Okay, I'm there," and then delivers maybe the funniest performance in the whole movie. Like, props to Channing Tatum, man. I've always been a fan. He's brilliant. I forget how funny he is, and then I see
the character. See, when you actually look at it in the context of this film, you realise why it's taken so long, and why that purgatory production thing is never going to end favourably for Channing Tatum. Because as much as I enjoy the character, I don't think he's strong enough on his own to have his own film. He's not a Spider-Man or a Hulk or a Captain America. He's very much a sort of a Hawkeye or something like that. He can pop up as a side character in another story or an ensemble sort of picture, much like what he did in this. I just don't think there's enough meat in the boat. He's a very cool looking character. And obviously Channing Tatum's really passionate about the character, and you can see that in the performance. He's hilarious. And his little action sequences in the film, I don't want to belittle it by saying little. I mean, pretty cool. Poor choice of words. But his action sequences are great, but I just don't think there's enough in that character to demand a standalone film. It wouldn't make money. It just wouldn't. No, and as much as Disney love throwing money away,
I would go. I mean, I
would as well, just for the accent.
Front and center, just to see what's the voice going to be. But no, you're right. Like, I mean, Gambit is a very, very cool character. I know X-Men fans are obsessed with that character. But it very much gives, like, this is like a kind of niche reference, unless you're a video game person, but like gives like Thane in Mass Effect 2 type vibes, where it's like, that's clearly the coolest. I should know
that because I played those Mass Effect games, but
that guy is the coolest guy in the supporting cast, but like, there's really not much to him. He's like, he's an alien with a really cool voice, who's an assassin, who's also a priest, who also has basically terminal space cancer. And it's like, and that's the whole character. There's really not much more to it than that. So it's like, I mean, as soon as you kind of like go down the list and just like, all right, there's not really enough here to substantiate an entire thing, but I love you as a supporting character, and that's Gambit.
I get the same feeling in was it the Book of Boba Fett that Cad Bane was in?
Yeah.
It was a great appearance. It was, but I'm like, there's not much more to this character than what you've seen.
And what there was to the character was already explored in the Dave Filoni TV show. So, I mean, that's the trouble when you have an extensive sort of back catalogue of stories through Rebels and Clone Wars and whatnot. When you cherry pick those characters and bring them in as a, wow, look at that, it's a big cameo.
Yeah.
You can't really take the character much further because you've already explored what's and all what they're about.
Yeah.
Albeit a lot of people won't have seen it. But you can't really desecrate what you've done in the previous stuff.
I mean, as the resident, like, biggest Cad Bane fan of all time, I do totally
he's a cool character, man. He
he's the coolest dude ever.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like Tatooine belongs to the Syndicate, and I was like, you're right. You should take it. It's yours.
He's almost like, I don't know, he's almost like a Clint Eastwood.
Yeah,
but a villainous Clint Eastwood outlaw kind of character in Star Wars. I don't quite understand why we've not really had that kind of character in the sort of cinematic side of things, because it would work so well. Maybe we have to bring it. I mean, he's dead now, isn't he? Or is he? I don't know. Maybe he can come back. I don't know. But yeah, man, I agree with you in terms of the whole voice stuff being inconsequential in the story, and it's something that you see with the actual villain as well. Because Cassandra, as cool as she is on a sort of visual level, and I really enjoyed her power where she wasn't like Charles Xavier. She couldn't read minds
Yeah, had to
from
go in.
a wheelchair. She had to get right in and dirty. I loved that on a visual level, the fingers probing around and coming out the eye and whatnot. But I just felt like they dropped the ball with that character. And like you said, just no real purpose in the story. There was no real driving. I'm going to go all fucking French here and say raison d'etre, because that's the best thing I can come up with just now. There was no real reason for the character to be there. It just felt tacked on. Like I said before, Paradox, he felt like an afterthought. He was just a mechanism to bring Wolverine and Deadpool together, and then he kind of just was off camera for an hour and a half of the film, and then he pops back up at the end. Then that's it. He gets rumbled. It's him. It's trying to kill these universes or timelines off. Cassandra, I think she had a lot. I said that in Sin's Corner. I think she had a lot of potential as a villain in a story that required an actual villain that was fully realised. This story wasn't requiring a fully realised villain. It was very much Deadpool and Wolverine, these two guys together. Let's just let chaos happen.
Yeah.
Pure anarchy, like what's happening in England just now with these nutters going out and burning things. That's just what happens when you put Logan and Wade together. But I just feel like they dropped the ball with the Cassandra character. I think that character had a lot more potential, but putting them in the void where nothing really is permanent and has any lasting impact on the story, and then bringing her out and then she's dead. It's like,
well, it's just,
you're right, it's inconsequential.
MacGuffin, it's a MacGuffin character. Like you were talking about MacGuffins before. It's like you literally put somebody in the void who can get out of the void at any time. Like that, if that's not a MacGuffin, then I don't know what is. Like that, and it just so happens to be a person. But the powers are also like pretty nondescript too, which is like another thing with some of these, especially like with villains in the MCU, where it's like, I mean, listen, if you're a comic book reader, maybe you know like the intricate details of, you know, Thanos's power level or something. Unless it's communicated to the audience in the movie itself, like no one's gonna until he kicks the shit out of Hulk at the beginning of Infinity War.
That was a pretty cool moment, to be fair.
We got no idea what he's capable of until.
Although one of the most annoying things for me in the Infinity Saga was Hulk not getting the chance to right that wrong. That has just felt like an enormous drop ball.
Yeah,
and I can't believe Kevin. There's a lot of things Kevin Feige dropped the ball with in the Infinity Saga. I enjoyed it as a saga. It's one of the greatest cinematic universes ever concocted, but there was a lot of things that really wound me up that he kind of dropped the ball on. And Hulk just becoming smart Hulk in Endgame and not really. I mean, he kind of does. In a way, he kind of does get his own back in Thanos because he reverses the snap, doesn't he?
Yeah. So
he kind of ruins his life's ambition by reverse snapping. But the fact he doesn't physically beat the shit out of him, always stuck in my... Is it craw? Is that what they say?
Yeah,
stuck in my craw. It wound me up. So, yeah. And on a villain level, I mean, this story's just... This film has no villains in my mind. I said that last week. It's just... Again, I don't know if that's a negative, because does it require a villain? Is that what they were going for? Is it a deliberate artistic choice? And when you think of previous MCU movies, I can't really think
of... If you think of previous Deadpool films...
Yeah.
You know...
You had your man from... he's always playing a villain, that little English fucker. You know, you probably know his name, Gianni. What an annoying guy. He was in that fighter jet, sort of World War II film that bombed. He's annoying. I'd need to search him
many
up. The Deadpool one villain. He's an annoying little shit. He's English. What's his name? I'm going to find his name just now. If you bear with me, I'm looking it up. What's his name? Fucking can't find him. What's going on? I'm looking at the wrong one. That's why it's Deadpool and Wolverine. But look, I mean, look, the villains and even the Deadpool universe have never...
Green, right? Played Ajax. Is that right?
Is that him? Yeah, Ed Skrein. Yeah, Ed Skrein. He's not really hugely memorable. You look at... I think that's been a recurring issue for the MCU across the board. They've not really... There's been one or maybe a half a dozen villains in 20-odd movies that really resonate and you remember. You think Thanos, you think... I mean, I'm going to go through it just now. The Winter Soldier, kind of a villain. He's one that kind of pops out.
Yeah.
The Iron Man movies don't really have memorable villains. You've got...
Killmonger was great.
Mickey Rourke. It was cool looking, but it was a shit movie. Killmonger was good. Killmonger was a great villain. Because he had an actual reason to exist. He had real sort of a revenge story against Wakanda and being left to fend for himself. He had obviously fire in his heart. There's not many villains across these movies that really jump out. Loki and Avengers, maybe.
Who was the villain in Logan? I just remember
It was Stephen Merchant, and it was.
Was
it? No, he was the albino. It was the sort of. What was
Boyd
it?
Holbrook's character. What was
Yeah.
what did he play?
Yeah.
Was it not a sort of like scientific organisation as well?
Yeah.
I've not seen that film in about 7 years, but they were trying to obviously.
Yeah.
They were chasing him, weren't they?
Wasn't
I just
great,
think
though, in terms of a villain in that film.
again, that movie's all about Logan, isn't it? It's all about him.
This film's all about Deadpool and Wolverine. So,
but I'm nitpicking. I'm trying to be.
John, it was the first thing you said came out of the
out.
theatre was.
There's no real
Don't
villain.
think much villain.
Gianni, I don't know what your thoughts were coming out the theatre. This is something we'll get into just now, I suppose. Stephen actually asked me. We weren't even on the escalators going down to leave the theatre. And he says, where would you rank that in terms of Deadpool movies? And I says, I think it's better than Deadpool 2, but it's nowhere near Deadpool 1. I think Deadpool 1, considering it's a really low budget affair, and obviously he was tight fighting tooth and nail to try and get this character as he wanted it into existence. I think it's remarkable what they achieved in that first film.
Yeah.
For me, this one's probably second. Deadpool 2 was all right. Also, you had Cable in there, and you had the X-Force. There was some funny moments. There's always funny moments in Deadpool. But for me, it's probably second and closer to Deadpool 2 than it is to Deadpool 1 in terms of where I would rank it. And in terms of the MCU as a whole, it's not even, I don't think it's even breaking into the top 12, 15 movies. And I mean, this is technically an MCU movie now, isn't it? Is it? I don't fucking know. Even now, I'm not sure. Is this an MCU movie? That's a whole other question. I don't know. Where would you have what was your mindset coming out? Did you try and rank? Is that something you would do? Rank this in terms of the other movies? Where would you put this?
I love rankings. Big rankings guy. Love doing rankings. I actually have.
Tier listing, that's one of my favorite fucking things.
Well, so I have with a buddy of mine. We keep track of our MCU rankings every time a new MCU thing comes out. We haven't updated though in a while, so I can't tell you where Deadpool and Wolverine is going to rank because we do it between the two of us, and then we have to like argue certain positions or whatever. But I can tell you where it ranks for me in the overall MCU. But first, I'll do the Deadpool one. This is my least favorite of the Deadpool movies personally, because the thing about I do agree with you. There's something very charming about Deadpool 1, particularly in just like the ambition of that film with the budget that they had, threading that needle, getting able to have that sort of juvenile level of humor, but still feel unique, that I do find very endearing. I think that Deadpool 2 is not as good as Deadpool 1 in terms of like a consistency basis, but Deadpool 2 of the franchise has, in my opinion, the most memorable moments. I think it has really high highs and really low lows. I love the montage in Deadpool 2 of him killing all the different like mob assassins. One of my favorite moments I think no one talks about is like when they're at the strip club or whatever, and he's like in drag and then takes off that's like kind of an obvious joke, right? But then he flips onto the table and the blink and you miss it, but he's wearing like stripper heels, and I was like, this is hilarious. Like that's so funny.
That's Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah, and it's like that's very funny and like did not need to be in the movie whatsoever, but is hilarious.
That just sums Deadpool up though, doesn't it? There's things that just are unnecessary, but they elevate just that little brief moment. It fucking takes you back to being like a 9-year-old laughing hysterically. You're like, why am I even laughing at this?
It's delightful.
It's ludicrous.
And so like Deadpool 2, I think has high highs, low lows.
And obviously Cable is you speak about villains, he's a great villain.
Love Cable.
His story of losing everything and obviously try to, I mean, that's a
I love Domino though too. Like I love
Domino's brilliant.
Like that moment where she's like just
Gianni, you're changing my mind here, mate. I'm new ranking this is fucking second. I'm changing Deadpool and Wolverine's now the third. You're changing my mind. It's been a while since I've seen the second movie, but now you're breaking it down. Domino, was that the one that had luck?
Yeah, so her whole power was just luck. Yeah, and
Yeah, she
he
was
makes
great.
fun of it the whole movie, and then she has
Zazie B.
that. She has Zazie B. She has that one like long shot where she's just running, and the cars are all exploding behind her, and it's just narrowly missing her over and over again. And I was like, this is brilliant. This is so fun. I think that Deadpool Wolverine is my least favorite of the three, and it's just solely because I don't think it really has a place existing. But in terms of like the morality of like bringing it into existence, I mean, but I think in less of a meta contextual level, Deadpool and Wolverine, I think plot wise, literally doesn't substantiate enough within the plot to actually make it exist. Like if you really like, we're talking about Cassandra Nova being a thin villain. Mr. Paradox's whole motivation is just that he wants to like do more work efficiently. Like that's just like very bizarre and not interesting. So
he's like a junior manager that's trying to fight. He's very ambitious and he wants to catch the eye of senior management. That's basically him in a nutshell. It's like the prequel Star Wars movies level of bureaucracy and just bollocks and bollocks in a movie. It's like what's the fucking point in this character? Why is he here?
Silly. I've never if you're gonna have any villain ever, like having the one that wants to do more work is weird. And I mean, no disrespect to the performances of the villains, because I think
didn't know it was the guy from Pride and Prejudice until after the film, Stephen.
Matthew McFadden is amazing.
I didn't know that.
Really good actor.
But I mean, it's definitely my least favorite of the three. I think in terms of the overarching MCU movies, because I do think it's an MCU movie. I mean, if it's it's done by Disney and Feige overseeing it and blah blah blah, and obviously they're able to play with a lot more IP, and it gives them the freedom to do a lot of different jokes, which I think is really cool and interesting. But I mean, in the overarching MCU, to me, it's somewhere in the ballpark of like, I mean, I would put it between right now in my ranking, I have Captain America: First Avenger at like 16, and then I have Avengers: Age of Ultron at 17. I would put it between those two. Is kind of where it fits. Where I'm like, it's inconsequential. I think it's fun to throw on. I think if you're in the mood for that type of thing, but that's kind of how I feel about Age of Ultron, where I'm like, look, if I really want to watch like a Hulkbuster fight a Hulk, I'll throw on Age of Ultron, but I'm not really going to seek it outside of that,
Yeah, I'd agree. I think that's the perfect sort of fit for this kind of film. It exists and it's fun if you just let your sort of all the cares of the world go and just get tore into something that's sweet and just enjoy it for like 2 hours. That's one thing I'll say about the film. Just going off on a brief tangent. And I've tried to rein the tangents in because the tangents were off the charts last week. It was just constant fucking talking about Doom and Victor Doom and Robert Downey Jr. talking about. I just kept saying, right, I'm going off piste. I always use the skiing term, off piste. I've never seen a set of skis in my life. I've never been on a ski slope, and I use the word off piste. It's like, why am I saying off piste? But one of the benefits of this film for me was the running time. I like films to be short, to tell the story, not stick around, and I enjoy that. In an era where you've got 2 hour and 45 minute and 3 hour long movies.
Yeah.
Avatar, obviously, Way of Water was fucking 3 hours and 15, 20 minutes long. It was to the point where when I came out the theatre, I couldn't even see properly. When I took the 3D glasses off, I'm like, too long, James. Too long, son. So I'll commend the director. I think it was the same guy that did Free Guy.
Yeah.
If that's the name of the film, Free Guy. Yeah. For keeping it short. They knew they didn't have much of a story. It was really just a celebration of those two characters. And like you said, Gianni, celebrating the Fox universe. Warts and all, and giving a fitting send off, and they did it in a relatively short time, 2 hours and like 10 minutes long. It's really short for a modern sort of blockbuster film.
Yeah,
so
especially one with as much kind of stuffed into it as well. Because it's like you're saying. I think the expectation with a lot of this stuff is that as soon as you have any sort of like cameos and that you want to like do justice to it or something like that, all of a sudden you're like bloating it by 10 minutes per cameo, and there's stuffing a lot of things in here, and you're thinking, oh god, it's going to be a 3 hour long movie or whatever. But it's like Multiverse of Madness or whatever, was like an hour and 40, and I do grow to appreciate that in my old age as I get older. I'm like, all right, well, if I'm gonna watch but I say that I'm kind of lying, because I've been fighting with my brother because we share like an Apple TV account or whatever, and I'm like, hey, let me buy Horizon, the Kevin Costner movie. It's like 3 hours and change or whatever.
Yeah.
And he's like,
There's a
absolutely not.
place for longer movies. If the story necessitates a longer movie, I'm absolutely all for it.
Yeah.
I'm all for it. I mean, I'll watch like an epic World War II movie. One I want to watch, I've never seen. Now again, this is me getting off fucking pieced again. The one about the sort of Lithuanian Soviet guy, and he loses his entire family, and the entire town gets wiped out by drug-crazed Nazis, and it really follows this young guy just going through absolute hell. I forget the name of it. It's a renowned World War II movie. I think that's like 3 years long, and it's supposed to be powerful. That kind of film I will sit and appreciate for what it obviously does in a historical level. For 3 years long, I'll sit and watch that kind of film. But when you get chapter 2 and it's 3 years long, it's like, for fuck's sake, seriously? How many endings are we going to get here? Now he's a spider. Why? I understand it's probably in the Stephen King novel, but fucking hell, it's too long.
Oh yeah. No, I as a big fan of Stephen King's It, the novel.
Was that in the novel when he became like a spider? He is a spider at the end, doesn't he?
So yeah.
Anyways, I think he turns in.
That's kind of how it is in the book.
It's kind of shape-shifting, isn't he? There's this misconception these novels are
I guess. Look, we could have like an hour-long discussion about all of the things in it that make it crazy, but yeah, kind of. That's what I'll say. Yeah, he's kind of a spider.
Yeah. I'm trying to think what else to discuss in this movie, because I'm meant to be the master of ceremonies here, aren't I?
I have a question actually for you guys.
That's how I can nip away and go to the loo.
Oh, Stephen, I'll talk fucking hind legs off of everything and anything. I have to really rein it in, because I talk and talk and talk. Everyone tells me to shut up. Technical level, what was your thoughts on a technical level with this? Because obviously there's been a lot of criticism in recent years for MCU that they've been kind of scrimping on the budgets for CGI. Also, there's been a lot of controversy over the way these CGIs houses, they call them, sort of companies are treated.
Yeah.
It's like the lowest bidder gets the contract, and then you're really seeing the overall quality depreciating. I felt like they kind of went back to form. This wasn't quite Black Widow at the end level of horror. I thought it was not bad, the CGI. On a technical level, there was some cool shots in there. I know we're kind of digging deep, and that's maybe not necessary to break down. I always feel that when we're doing reviews on video, it's like, we have to talk about the technical stuff now. Let's talk about the score.
When it comes
even though there's nothing to say about the fucking score.
When it comes to VFX, like I tend to be pretty pessimistic about the VFX industry, at least until they're unionized. Reason being, like when I saw Godzilla -1, and then I saw the budget that Godzilla -1 had, and then it went on to win Best VFX Oscar.
I need to watch that film, man. I've heard that's really good.
It's phenomenal. I would
really good.
highly recommend it. You could catch it on Netflix right now. In the US, I don't know if it's available in the UK on Netflix, but I'll send it to you. I'll send you a copy of it.
I need to watch it. I've heard that is very good.
But like, when I saw that the movie was like a budget of maybe $10 million, there's really nothing in my mind that can convince me that the budgets of a lot of these MCU movies and a lot of major Hollywood projects are clear money laundering schemes. There's just no other explanation for it. And so like when I see all this money and a movie can't look as good as Godzilla -1 with, 100 times the budget, something is clearly wrong. I think that Deadpool Wolverine suffers from, I mean, that's just my pessimistic rant or whatever.
Also, the CGI body, you've discussed that there. That's always,
Like, I think that Deadpool Wolverine suffers from, like, I think maybe over criticism, because I do think that, like, film Twitter people who are never going to watch an MCU movie at this point anyway are going to be sitting there and nitpicking a lot of different shots out of context. Like the one you see all the time is the sword clipping through his body as he catches it when it's like going direct to camera, and that shot is in the movie. Or the one that you were just referencing with, like, CGI Hugh Jackman, where they just jump through the bus windshield, and I understand, but like people that are criticizing those shots on Twitter are often doing them completely irrespective of context. And it's the same thing that happens with like stand-up comedians and jokes and stuff like that. I understand if you have the criticism when you're seeing it in the context of the thing, but I think what you'll come to find 9 times out of 10 is that the context of something does make a big difference. And I think in particular with Deadpool and Wolverine, it's very stylized in how a lot of that stuff comes across. It's highly like almost anime inspired in a lot of the different usage of, you know, sort of slow methodical placement of action sequences. Even the way they cut out music for whole elements of like different you know, stunt coordination moves and then cutting back into the music, all of that stuff is done in a really interesting way. I can't exactly say a unique way, but done in a way that I think does invest audiences in it, where I think that you can definitely say that the movie is over-reliant on a lot of those different visual elements. You could definitely say that it's a very self-indulgent in a lot of those different visual effects elements. But I think in the context of the film, they work far more often than they miss. You're not going to walk away from this like you might walk away from something like Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes and say, that's going to win a VFX Oscar. But you're also not going to walk away from this saying, that's the worst part of that movie, because it's not.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a very stylistic kind of film as well. So it does kind of, you're right, it necessitates having a degree of sort of visual mentalness. I actually didn't even realise the shot of, I mean, it kind of obviously it was a fucking CGI shot. I'm not jumping out the back of a window. But I wasn't really taking that in at that time. I was just completely at one with the nonsense of that Deadpool sequence. Yeah. Obviously, the nice pool stuff is so clearly CGI that it's ludicrous. Every time he's on the screen, I'm laughing at it. It was just odd. It was bizarre. What was your thoughts, Steve? Have you got any thoughts on the sort of technical stuff? Is that something we discussed on Sin's channel?
I think we kind of touched on it. I think it was more the sequences we
if I allowed it, I was talking all the time.
No, I think we did to a degree, but we didn't really sort of dive too deep into it. But no, it was okay. It was you can always tell in terms of CG visual effects, blood is one of the things they've just not really mastered in terms of, and the same with like things like condensation or smoke or anything like that. You can see it's CG. It's quite obvious. But in terms of this, I think I agree with Gianni. It's in between somewhere where it's not the worst visual effects I've seen, but it's not, as you said, it's not at the level of sort of the Apes films or anything like that. It's not going to win. I can't see it winning any awards for visual effects. No. But it serves a purpose.
But it's not dead.
It's almost, I mean, it's just really bad. It's just eye candy, isn't it?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it serves a purpose for the sequences that were involved in this film. So it was
okay. I have a question for you guys actually, because we were talking earlier about, you know, do you want to see Deadpool in the MCU or whatever? Do you guys have a desire to see Hugh Jackman back as Logan after this?
No, I don't. I'll be frank. I didn't really want to see him coming back after Logan, but I'll take it if it happens. But I don't really have a desire, to be honest with you. I think we've talked about it in our movie shows over the last couple of years. They need to move on.
Yeah.
At some point, you know, with the X-Men, they need to move on with recasting and stop getting back to the. They're already talking about James McAvoy coming back into the MCU. I'm like, leave it. Just leave it. Move on.
Love James, but no.
Yeah.
No, for me, I don't want to see Hugh coming back. I mean, he's getting older now, and obviously he's in incredible shape, better shape than I could ever dream of being in. But it's taxing on the man, and from a purely sort of personal point of view, you'd imagine he's got more ambition in the rest of his life and career than appearing as Wolverine again. I mean, he's done his time. He's played the character for, over 20 years now or something, isn't it? What, 24 years now. After, obviously, I mean, there was a gap between Logan and now, but factoring in the whole stint, it's over 20 years. There's not much more he can give to the character. And much like you said, Gianni, you've said like the villain and the void stuff is almost inconsequential. This whole story is really inconsequential. There's no real need to have Wolverine in this story. It really does feel like it's. I'm shitting on this, mate. I feel like
doing Ryan Reynolds a favour.
Yeah, it just feels like it's Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman getting together because they can. They do a little send off to Fox, and then Deadpool can maybe make his merry way into the MCU and become
There was-
neutered into a PG-13
There was something I was hoping
character.
for, and we talked about it.
But
When
I
we
don't
did
want him though.
the trailer reaction. When you see them jump through that portal, I had it in my head that was probably near the end of the film, and when they get through, that's them jumping into the MCU, and when they get through, I've overthought this, Gianni. I thought perhaps maybe this is when we'll see who's going to take over.
Yeah.
You know, when he gets through the other side, we get
Yeah.
to see, I don't know, Henry Cavill.
Yeah, what was your thoughts on Henry Cavill, incidentally? I've been intrigued to get your thoughts. But no, I mean, for me, I don't want to see Hugh Jackman. I'm conflicted because I also said last week, and I stand by it, I can't imagine any other actor playing the character of Wolverine. It's been that long with Hugh, and I'm just not ready for a really small actor to portray Wolverine. I'm not used to seeing a 6'1", 6'2" Wolverine now. I mean, I know Daniel Radcliffe's really blossomed into a great actor since he was Harry Potter. He was god-awful in those Harry Potter movies, most of them. But he really has blossomed. He's been on Broadway. He's a stage actor. He's really respected. He is. I've seen him in films since Harry Potter, and he's became a great actor. But I'm not having him as Wolverine. I know he's jacked out his mind, and he's in really great shape. But I'm not having him. I'm conflicted. I don't want to see another Wolverine actor, but I don't want to see Hugh again either. He's done his time up. But I'm sorry. What was your thoughts on? I mean, that's something we never really discussed. We spoke about cameos. Were you shocked to see Henry Cavill in there? And what was your thoughts? Is that somebody you think could play Wolverine? I mean, I don't think he's going to because he's been in this film. They've kind of scratched that itch.
Yeah.
What was your thoughts in that very brief moment?
I mean,
did you realize it was him?
I knew, I obviously recognized. I was like, oh my god! The second he kind of turned around, I was like, oh wow, Henry Cavill, and it was a surprise. I think that I mean, I like Henry Cavill. I think I like the person that I see in like interviews and stuff of Henry Cavill more than I tend to like the performances that he's not that he's given bad performances. But he's always just kind of big dude that's just kind of who he plays. Which is not his fault necessarily. I mean, he is a big dude, and I think that that's like kind of what's required of him for a lot of those different roles. I think I would like more Henry Cavill that I get in like the Ungentlemanly Warfare type of Henry Cavill that lets him like flex a little bit more of his like weirdness that I see in like interview stuff than I do Henry Cavill as like Wolverine. But yeah, it's within the ballpark of something that he could play. It wouldn't be my first choice. I think if I was given the keys to the X-Men kingdom, I think that I would do everything in my power to avoid having the character of Wolverine, at least in the first X-Men movie, particularly if it's in the MCU. I think I would avoid it at all costs. I think you could maybe discuss it for like if you did a follow-up movie or something like that. But really, I mean, Cyclops has to be done justice. Not that James Marsden was a bad choice. I think it's actually a really good choice for casting. Obviously, he seems to have aged out of the role, so I don't think you can go back there. I think that Ty Sheridan, who played him in the newer movies, I like Ty Sheridan quite a bit. I don't think that was the right fit. I think that focusing a movie on Scott in particular would be the way forward, or the perfect entry point for an X-Men film. And then beyond that, then you can start adding those people as it goes. But we've seen a Rogue and Wolverine story already. We've seen a Jean and Wolverine story already. We've seen a Wolverine and insert samurai here story already. I don't need to see more Wolverine stories. I think that Hugh is incredible as that character. He is iconic as that character. That's probably the best superhero casting that exists. But I'm ready to see Hugh move on, and I'm ready to see superhero movies leave that character behind, at least for a little bit. And I was excited about that possibility at the end of Logan, and now it feels like a bit of a backslide, but the MCU seems to be backsliding a lot. So
we wanted to see at least a decade between Logan. I mean, we're not far away from a decade now, but maybe not from Logan, but the merger of Fox and Disney, we wanted them to leave at least a decade of a gap until they even broached the idea of the X-Men and Wolverine. And in my mind, at that point, it would have been a complete reboot of the Avengers and the MCU, because I don't feel that you can bring the X-Men in and Fantastic Four, which they are doing anyway, without Captain America. Steve Rogers. I'm not shitting on Anthony Mackie and Sam Wilson. I like that character, but you can't not have Tony Stark and Iron Man and Steve Rogers and all these characters, Black Widow and things like that, and have the X-Men. And I mean, it just doesn't work for me. You need all those characters. You need it to be at its absolute peak sort of comic book storytelling potential. You need to have all the big players there. And to make that happen, that would necessitate rebooting the whole MCU.
Yeah.
And in my mind, that would have been like a decade out. But they just keep going with it and going. And I think this will be the end. I'm pretty confident Secret Wars and the sort of Doom movie will be the end.
I have my prediction of what they're thinking with all this stuff. So if you want to put on your tinfoil hat with me, this is what I predict to actually happen. So I think that Secret Wars is going to be, sort of implosion of like everything MCU related. And I think when they pick it back up again, it's going to be exclusively X-Men for all of Phase 1.0.
That'd be good. Yeah.
And at the very end of whatever 1.0 is, whatever that last movie is in that cycle, the after credits is going to be teasing Avengers versus X-Men. So X-Men realizing that they're not the only mutants in existence and realizing that actually there's other superhero factions, and then having that, because that comic book arc is obviously very famous because it was really inspirational for bridging the gap between a lot of those X-Men characters and a lot of those Avengers characters. It gives you all the same stuff that a sort of Civil War event gave you. It gives you the opportunity to get to meet the X-Men and like a new and fresh start. And then if you want to, it gives you the opportunity to either go back to old casting choices if they were really working and you think that, budgetarily or financially it's going to really make a big benefit, or you can recast all of those characters. But then at least you have time to think about it over the course of the next decade or so while you're making X-Men movies. That's my prediction of how they do it.
No, I like the sound of that, man. Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, I would like to see that.
Yeah,
because
so
again,
clip that because then Movie Burn is going to run it 10 years from now when I'm right. And then we're gonna be.
Oh yeah, all right. Because that's something I would be on board for that. I just don't feel like having Hugh Jackman portraying Wolverine for another 10 years and fucking no Tony Stark, and you've got Iron Laddie or Iron. What's the other one? There's another iteration of. What's the other one? Iron Heart or something like that.
Yeah. Apparently that's still in the works. I think Iron Heart show or something. But yeah, no. Let these men drink water again, dude. These dehydrated bodies. I mean, look, I know I live in one, you know what I mean? But I look just like that. But I drink water. Let this guy drink water again, man. Yeah. Let him eat sugar. Let him eat processed foods. I don't think the guys had it'd be such a shit.
That's why I'll never have a six-pack ever. I tried it. I tried to cut all the food out. It's just not possible for me. I like living too much. I like eating too much. There's too much good food out there to have a six-pack. So I completely agree with you. That's why Hugh can't come back long term, because the man has gave his all, blood, sweat and tears, and the physique. And you just cannot expect that from a guy moving into his 50s long term to continue that dedication, the work ethic and sacrifices. He's got a young family. So,
dude, you can't expect it from a guy in his fucking 20s, all right? Let the guy live. Let him have some pad thai or something.
What's incredible is there's people out there who willingly do it. That's and crazy. They've not got a film to actually shoot, and they're not earning hundreds of millions over a career. They're just doing that because they want to. Fucking weirdos. Thoughts on the last couple of thoughts we'll do before we sort of round this review up. We've not really discussed a sort of favourite action sequence. I mean, there's been a few in this movie. I feel like it would be necessary to kind of just pick out one that maybe caught your fancy. And I'll maybe go first. For me, I says it last week, just for the powerfulness of the imagery. Seeing Deadpool facing off against Wolverine in the void for the first time, to the backdrop of a sort of fallen 20th Century Fox logo.
Yeah,
that was a pretty fucking cool moment.
Very fun.
Maybe not the most grandiose action sequence in the movie, but for me, just seeing these two characters going hell for leather, just impaling themselves. And I think that Wolverine says at one point, "Let's see how you grow your fucking head back," or something like that. That was a pretty cool moment. It had everything. It was like a sort of fencing match. There were two shade bitch kind of throwing insults and stabbing each other.
Wolverine was galloping, and was that?
No,
that
that
sequence?
I think. Oh, when was that?
It was almost galloping like a wolf.
Oh
Was
yeah,
that
you're
not
right.
the-
Yeah, he started
Yeah.
it by
Oh,
literally
was
running on all fours.
Yeah, that was mad.
That
Yeah,
was excellent. Yeah.
yeah. For me, that was my standout. It's maybe not the best. I mean, there's so many little action moments in this movie, but for me, that was my standout. I don't know. Maybe you want to go, Stephen?
Well, I'll stick to my guns from last week. I think the bus scene probably
Yeah.
just for visuals. I know that it was an absolutely pointless scene, but just in terms of sitting there with popcorn and a drink and just going, all right, okay, we're doing this. Just the way it was shot, I really appreciated the way it was shot. It kind of went off screen for a little moment, and then it came back in. It was just, it wasn't necessary. Didn't add anything to the story or anything like that. But if we're talking about eye candy, probably that's the moment that kind of sticks out for me, I
And
think.
like I said, it was almost like a comic book.
Yeah.
You could imagine that on an actual graphic novel.
Mm.
Gianni, if you get like a standout scene, is there any one in particular that kind of grabs you watching the film and you thought, that's the sort of defining action moment in this movie?
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, the Honda Odyssey fight scene is the peak for me personally. Because again, like it's just a sex scene, and it's like very, with all homoerotic the tendencies like fully on display. I just like I really admire fight scenes with like a sort of natural obstacle, because we've seen like so many really good fight scenes in like big open space, and obviously like that stuff is still really cool. John Wick literally makes an entire franchise out of those types of things, and I think that
man, I'd love to put your brains on that last John Wick.
Oh yeah,
I would actually like to pick
honestly
Gianni's brains on that trailer for Kill.
Yeah, I've heard nothing but raves about Kill. Also,
I remember
and
Kill
I
now.
have to see it. But that's definitely on my list. But I'm behind on a lot of stuff, dude. I haven't seen Monkey Man yet, and it's on Peacock, and I can watch it, and I haven't seen it yet. But I really like. But I mean, I really like just fight scenes with like a natural obstacle. I think it's really neat. I think it's really cool. Like, I think it doesn't even have to be like a very pervasive obstacle. Like just something in like a unique space, I think can be really cool. Like I really love the Raid 2, like the pivotal like climatic fight scene at the end of the Raid 2 in the kitchen, like it kind of creating like the obstacle of just like the space that we're actually in is like kind of pervasive and interesting and unique. And I think that that's kind of the coolest thing that car fight sequence offers. It's like we have these two characters who cannot die. They're just going to go at each other until they're exhausted. And we're going to do it in a space that's going to condense all of the action into like a very, very tight focus. And I'm like, that's cool. That's a really neat idea. I haven't seen that before. And so I think that if something's going to, and it's not like I'm looking at these movies being like, I got to see Deadpool and Wolverine fight or whatever. But I mean, I think that's a cool idea. Like if you're going to do it.
I agree with I agree with the contained sort of aspect of it. We've seen that done in a lot of movies where you obviously think of John Wick and there's various moments in that building top down. Obviously the concept of him getting chased around the Arc de Triomphe was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Atomic Blonde getting up and down the stairs is one that stands out for me, using the sort of geography of a sort of area to have the fight and the action play out. Bullet Train, Snowpiercer, there's been moments like that. Well, there's another one that was off the top of my head, I forgot. But there's a lot of
the best one in the MCU, in my opinion, is the Steve Rogers in the elevator fight scene.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very much like condensing the space. Like we've all seen Steve Rogers kick ass in big open space, but him in an elevator, like that's fucking cool.
It was just the fact that they built it as well. It was the moment, wasn't it? That you knew it was coming, and they knew it was coming, and he knew it was coming. I forget the line. Shall we get started or something like that? What is it he says again? It's so long. I need to go back and watch these movies.
Yeah, I should watch Winter Soldier again because I really liked Winter Soldier. That was a fun movie.
It's one of my favorite MCU movies as well. But yeah, standout performances, and I'm going to kind of frame this via the sort of perspective, via just who you feel had the better moments in this film, because we discussed this last week. And I think we were in agreement, Stephen, out of Ryan, because it's realistic, it's between Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman. Let's be honest here, it's a two-horse race. And we agreed that the more poignant and powerful moments, and moments where one of the two actually got to flex their acting muscles and deliver lines. They all kind of fell with Hugh Jackman. You think the campfire with obviously X-23 in the void, he lays bare all of his demons. It's like a minute and a half, 2 minute long scene that he's just talking and talking and talking, maybe longer than that, 3-4 minutes long. And he's just unleashing why he's in the state he's in. And her retort, "You've never been the right guy," or something like that. I can't remember the exact line. It's been over a week.
Yeah.
Give me a break. Don't come at me. I'm like Joe Biden at times. For fuck's sake, I have to drink like 3 litres of water. I'm certainly not Bernie Sanders. I'm more like Joe Biden at the age of 35. Can you imagine how terrifying I'll be in 35 years' time?
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, Adderall, just give it to me. That moment, and then obviously there's another moment where he just unleashes on Wade in the car in the infamous Honda Odyssey.
Yeah.
I feel like he gets
God's
the best
biggest
moment.
joke that you can't die or something like
You can't
that.
die. That was a fucking amazing line. He gets the best moments for me. And as much as I enjoy Ryan Reynolds and I think he's a great guy and a great actor, I think Hugh is the better actor, the better all-round performer out of the two. The guy can do everything. He can sing, he can dance, he can act. There's nothing that he can fucking cook. I mean, I've watched him cooking before. He can walk down a street in Yorkshire and not get noticed. It's like, what's going on with this guy? So for me, Hugh just edges it. I think he is the standout performer in this film for me. I think the more poignant Deadpool does get moments, but it's just in that character's natural sort of, I don't know, existence to play it off as a joke. I mean, he has a kind of poignant moment in that office with that's Happy Hogan, isn't it?
Yeah.
Happy Hogan, where he's like laying it bare, but like you said, Gianni, a joke's never far away with that character. So for me, it was definitely Hugh, and I know you agree, Stephen.
Yeah.
You obviously picked Hugh as your standout last week.
I think he just edges it for me as well. I appreciate Ryan Reynolds' contribution in terms of acting in this film as well. Although he's dare I say it, he's not as an accomplished actor as Hugh Jackman in the sense of range, but definitely those moments, especially the campfire scene for me, that's the one that kind of stayed with me a few days after. Did it have to be there? I suppose for the purpose of the character and his arc and his purpose in this film as well. But no, it was. I don't get into Deadpool films looking for superb acting and big moments or anything like that. But I think what they did in this film in certain moments, they did really well in terms of the acting, and particularly with Hugh Jackman.
Well, Gianni, I mean, I think you nailed it. Where he says that it's a story, the sort of overall thematic in this movie is redemption and sort of coming from a place of despair and feeling out of sync with society, not being able to work in a team. If you'd like, obviously Wade feels like he's a bit of a joke figure. He's selfish, he's lost everything, he has to redeem himself. Obviously Logan in this, he's the worst Wolverine ever. He's the worst ever Wolverine, I think the line Paradox says. He obviously drank himself into a pit, lost all of the other mutants in his universe, and then went off on a killing spree. He's in a really dark place. He has to come from a place of redemption. And I feel that with that knowledge, and you have them act out their moments where they're unearthing or sort of demons, I just feel like Hugh's moments are more, I should say, because I'm getting some Scottish words coming in. Are more impactful. At that moment where you get back, and even when she's prodding through his mind, he has the more impactful moments. I don't know if you agree, Gianni, though. Maybe you're talking absolute shit. It's a Ryan Reynolds show. I just feel that Ryan, it's like a mismatched body, and Ryan's the more, he is the Ryan Gosling to Russell Crowe and The Nice Guys. Where he's just, I mean, they're both kind of jokey. It is Russell Crowe, isn't it? Yeah. There's always a more serious and a more
Russell Crowe's definitely the straight man. Yeah, Wolverine's definitely the straight man of this one. I'm in line with you guys. I mean, my favorite performance in the movie is Channing Tatum, but I mean, but putting that aside, Hugh Jackman's never missed his character. The difference, I think, just comes down to I think that Deadpool is Ryan Reynolds. Like I don't think there's much separation of those two, of that person from that character. And I think the most separation that you get is obviously just like the sort of contextual stuff. But just like in terms of how they sort of view the world, I think that Reynolds just puts a lot of himself into that character very, very easily, very, very effortlessly. and I think that that's always a pleasure to see. I've been a fan of Ryan Reynolds for a while, and I think that he's capable of maybe doing something outside of that wheelhouse, but it's clearly the thing that he's most comfortable in. It's the thing that he's best at, and if it ain't broke, don't fix it. What's cool about Hugh, particularly in this movie, is that it's a different Wolverine than we've even seen in the other iterations of Wolverine, where it's like it lives in a similar place, I think, in how he performs it, but I think that it circumstantially, it's very, very different. We're used to seeing Wolverine as the guy who steps up, as the guy who's the hero, not the one who lost it all. And so it's kind of fun to watch him just like down on his luck, pessimistic and sort of pouting about it. And it's cool to see him really tap into that rage. And it's cool to see him let loose at like, even with the lines, like I love a good straight man character, like Jason Bateman, I think is like quintessential, like best straight man. I think that Michael Cera in Superbad, great straight man. Like I love a good straight man because I think that they quietly get away with the funniest lines, and like that's no different in this movie too. Like even Hugh's comedic moments totally work. Like one of the funniest line deliveries in the whole thing is like, "He died from murder, you dumb fuck." Like that was like brilliant. And so yeah, I mean, Hugh Jackman is always excellent. I don't think there's a bad performance in this movie though. Honestly, like everybody kind of sells. I think there's bad characters in the movie, but I definitely don't think there's that performances is something that this one was lacking.
I completely agree. Yeah,
I was surprised with, just in terms of performances as well. Chris Evans, for the brief time that he was in the film, I thought he did really well with the Johnny Storm character. Yeah. I thought that was really good.
It's fun watching him have fun.
Yeah,
He's been so serious for so long.
Post-credit stuff was just unreal. I actually felt like that was borderline AI. I'm like, there's no way Chris Evans can... I say that though, but every time I'm always blown away when I listen to Chris Evans in interviews. I've watched obviously like the actor on actor stuff. I mean, you hear him talking. I don't know why in my mind's eye I think that he's this sort of... He's just, I don't know.
Straight-laced.
Yeah, straight. No, just like kind of just not uneducated, because that's harsh as hell, but just when you watch him, you think he's this sort of macho guy. He's not really going to be that well spoken. But when you hear him in interviews, he's just the most well spoken and eloquent, one of the most well spoken, eloquent actors you'll see out there. He's able to really have an in-depth discussion with people, and the way that he just speaks is really just brilliant.
See that last,
but that line, man, it just goes and goes and goes. I'm like, there's no fucking way that's.
I was reading today. I think it might have been on Twitter, funnily enough.
Don't say it's not.
No. Ryan Reynolds had called him a few years ago about this part, and he was very keen on it. I think they're very good friends, and Ryan Reynolds offered them the chance of reading that line on like cue cards, and I don't think that's something you can do on
that's like Sean Bean in The Lord of the Rings.
It's an absolute rant.
Sean Bean had to read the "one doesn't merely walk into Mordor" line on his knee. He had the script on his knee. He had to look down. He referenced it. It was that fucking long. But I was just really impressed with that as well. I like the character. I like the way they handled that character. And I like to sort of joke about, did you see what he was doing to the budget? You overuse an actor like Chris Evans, he will overpower the movie. As big a personality as Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman both have, Chris Evans is a massive personality, massive screen presence. Even if he's not playing Captain America, you overuse that character, he will absolutely destroy the balance of the movie. So I liked the way they utilised him, and he didn't stay around for too long. It was like 10 minutes max in the movie, and he was vaporised, so I liked that. Yeah. Sort of final thoughts in the film, I guess, man, and if we're rating it, what would you rate it? I can tell you right now, I'm giving this movie 2 ratings. I'm fucking absolutely copping out. I'm giving this movie a rating from a sort of MCU fanboy aspect and where I would rate it in terms of other MCU movies, and I'm going to give it a sort of more impartial rating, the sort of comparing it to other movies that aren't MCU movies, because that's not something I ever really do, but I'm doing it now. I've not really got much more to say. We've spoke about this movie for nearly the entire running time of the fucking movie, so I don't know why I'm saying final thoughts. So I'll just go straight to the rating for me. I'll dive right in. 2-footed challenge. That's a football soccer phrase that I've just said there. It's a tough one for me in terms of an MCU movie. As I says, I don't even have it in the top 15 all time. and I'm trying to think how I'd have rated those movies. So I would probably go with a solid 7.3 out of 10 for an MCU movie. In terms of an actual non-MCU movie and comparing it against other proper movies, to quote Martin Scorsese, he'd probably say something like that. And he's right, to be fair. It's probably a 6 out of 10, 6.5 out of 10.
Yeah,
It's like it's an average movie, man. If you were to take away Ryan Reynolds, and it's a stupid thing to fucking say because the whole movie is the Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman factor. That's it. But if you were to put other actors in, this movie would be terrible. It would be, you're coming for those personalities. You're coming for those two guys. MCU movie, 7.3 out of 10. Normal movie, 6.5 out of 10 for me. That's a complete cop-out. Cop-out from me.
I mean,
One rating. Come on, John.
As we were coming to this sort of conclusion that I was starting to think the rating in terms of where I put this, and I thought, it's somewhere in between 7 and 7.5, and I'm like, well, I still maintain in my personal opinion, it's probably the second best Deadpool experience I've had. Obviously, the original film being my favourite, and probably this just edges Deadpool 2, but I was going to rate this 7.3, and I thought, well, I don't really rate Deadpool 2 lower than that, so where do I go with this? So I'm going to stick with one rating. It's probably a 7.4 for me. I did enjoy the film. I take it for what it is. It's not proper film or anything like that. It's not going to win Academy Awards or anything like that. It is what it is. And just to get into the theatre and see these two guys do it, probably for the last time. I mean, I know we talked about, obviously, do you think Wolverine or Hugh Jackman will return as Wolverine? And then obviously we've asked the question, will Deadpool fit into this MCU? We don't even know if we'll see another Deadpool film at this point. I'm not sure, but probably will, because it'll make money.
Yeah.
But for me, 7.4 probably.
Steve, you've actually got me thinking there before I allowed Gianni in. What would I have actually rated the other Deadpool movies? And now that you actually put me on the spot there, I'm trying to think if I don't think I have. 7.3 for an MCU movie. I think I'd rate, because I've changed my mind. Gianni changed my mind. I think this is the worst of the Deadpool movies, and that's not to say it's bad. It's just that in terms of the other movies, I think they age it. I'd probably rate Deadpool 2 like a 7.5. It's a little bit better for me. Yeah. There's just little moments. I agree with you, Gianni. You kind of reminded me. There's just more. There's more to the story. It's more thought out for me. It's more of a proper film. It's not just get these two characters together for a sort of final goodbye. Well, for one anyway. Deadpool 1, I'd probably rate a little bit higher, probably closer to an 8 out of 10. I don't think it's an unbelievable film, even in the context of the superhero and MCU. Maybe a little bit higher because of what it did. It kind of shook up the genre a bit. But yeah, I'm sticking with 7.3. Fuck it.
Yeah, I'm like a 6.5 is kind of where I land on it. And I mean, listen, like you said, that definitely doesn't mean that it's a bad movie by any stretch of the imagination. I've given 0.5 before, so like trust me, I have seen trust me, I have seen worse. So this I would watch anything like 6 and above again willingly. And there's stuff below 6 that I have seen more than once.
Gianni, have you seen Phoenix Forgotten?
I haven't seen it. No,
you need to watch that film. I need to get your views on it.
Yeah, I really want to watch it.
Terrible, honestly, it's terrible. But I've been intrigued to see if you liked it, because you're more knowledgeable than I am. Let's be honest. So if you like it, I may change my mind. Not shit. For me, it's fucking terrible.
Well, we have to just do like a special episode of just a Phoenix Forgotten. We just
I don't think I could put myself through watching that movie again. And I understand the actual concept of it. It's a real event that happened. People seen the lights in the sky above a plateau. I understand, but it just wasn't executed for me. Terrible movie. Sorry, I went off piste again.
I love that Phoenix Forgotten just keeps catching strays from this Deadpool.
It's been catching it for a long time. I watched this movie about 7 years ago, and I still talk about it to this day. I've not forgotten about it. Yeah, it's certainly not forgotten for me. But look, I think that's going to round it up. It's been nearly 2 hours of discussion, which is absolutely fucking mind-blowing, but that's what happens when you sit people down and have a little conversation. Sometimes it does. Certainly when I sit down, I can't shut up. I keep getting told by everybody, can you not rest your tongue? Have you got a nervous problem? I haven't. I just really like talking, and nobody's going to stop me talking ever.
You're passionate, John. You're
I'm
passionate.
passionate about too many things, though, and I just even things that I shouldn't be passionate about. I'm passionate about. But yeah, let's go round it up, man. What is your thoughts going to the audience now, or perhaps watching after the fact? I don't know if there's been anybody in during it. I've not been keeping an eye on it. Been too engrossed in the conversation. What is your thoughts? Perhaps it's up there. I can see. What's your thoughts? I've never seen that. What's your thoughts in Deadpool and Wolverine? What would you rate the movie out of 10? Where would you rate it in terms of the MCU? Standout moments, yada, yada, yada. If you've got anything to maybe share based on our overall discussion, share it down below in the comment section. That's the place to put your thoughts. Like the video if you've enjoyed it. I don't know how I'm going to end this because it's not like I normally do it. It's going to be abrupt, but you're just going to have to live with it. Like the video if you've enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell icon to get notifications straight to your eyes for future content like this. Reviews, reactions, everything in between. And until next time, thank you once for watching us. Thank you once again for watching us. I was about to thank Gianni because I never actually thanked Gianni. Thank you, Gianni, coming on and actually having this conversation with us. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you for
It's
having
always a pleasure to put your mind, your shit, and you kind of raise the bar when you come on the channel. So we do appreciate it.
I'm always
And,
happy to be here. I love coming on Movie Burgers. It's always
I'm just
fun.
impressed you can understand us, Gianni. That's the first thing that I always take away. You can actually understand what we're saying.
If you can understand Channing Tatum in this movie, then
exactly. To be fair, Gianni, I couldn't understand Channing Tatum in the movie. There was things where I'm like, what the fuck did he just say there? It went over my head, and I'm like, just laugh and go with it. It's all right. I'll look at the quotes later on after the movie. But yeah, to anybody that's been watching, thank you once again for watching us. And until next time, bye-bye. Terrible ending, guys. Sorry.
Awful.
Bye.
Awful.